A spinning wheel is a device for spinning thread or yarn from natural or synthetic fibers. Spinning wheels appeared in China, probably in the 11th century, and very gradually replaced hand spinning with spindle and distaff. Spinning machinery, such as the spinning jenny and spinning frame, displaced the spinning wheel during the Industrial Revolution. History. The earliest clear illustrations of the spinning wheel come from Baghdad, China and Europe, and there is evidence that spinning wheels had already come into use in both China and the Islamic world during the 11th century. According to Irfan Habib, the spinning wheel was introduced into India from Iran in the 13th century. In France, the spindle and distaff were not displaced until the mid-18th century. The spinning wheel replaced the earlier method of hand spinning with a spindle. The first stage in mechanizing the process was mounting the spindle horizontally so it could be rotated by a cord encircling a large, hand-driven wheel. The great wheel is an example of this type, where the fiber is held in the left hand and the wheel slowly turned with the right. Holding the fiber at a slight angle to the spindle produced the necessary twist. The spun yarn was then wound onto the spindle by moving it so as to form a right angle with the spindle. This type of wheel, while known in Europe by the 14th century, was not in general use until later. The construction of the great wheel made it very good at creating long-drawn soft fuzzy wools, but very difficult to create the strong smooth yarns needed to create warp for weaving. Spinning wheels ultimately did not develop the capability to spin a variety of yarns until the beginning of the 19th century and the mechanization of spinning. In general, the spinning technology was known for a long time before being adopted by the majority of people, thus making it hard to fix dates of the improvements. In 1533, a citizen of Brunswick is said to have added a treadle, by which the spinner could rotate her spindle with one foot and have both hands free to spin. Leonardo da Vinci drew a picture of the flyer, which twists the yarn before winding it onto the spindle. During the 16th century, a treadle wheel with flyer was in common use, and gained such names as the Saxony wheel and the flax wheel. It sped up production, as one needn't stop spinning to wind up to the yarn. On the eve of the Industrial Revolution, it took at least 5 spinners to supply one weaver. Lewis Paul and John Wyatt first worked on the problem in 1738, patenting the roller spinning machine and the flyer and bobbin system for drawing wool to a more even thickness. Using 2 sets of rollers that traveled at different speeds, yarn could be twisted and spun quickly and efficiently. However, they did not have much financial success. In 1771, Richard Arkwright used water wheels to power looms for the production of cotton cloth, his invention becoming known as the water frame. More modern spinning machines use a mechanical means to rotate the spindle, as well as an automatic method to draw out fibers, and devices to work many spindles together at speeds previously unattainable. Newer technologies that offer even faster yarn production include friction spinning, an open-end system, and air jets. Types. Numerous types of spinning wheels exist, including the great wheel, also known as walking wheel or wool wheel for rapid long-draw spinning of wool and spun yarns, the flax wheel, which is a double-drive wheel used with a distaff for spinning linen, Saxony and upright wheels, all-purpose treadle-driven wheels used to spin both woolen and worsted spun yarns, and the charka, native to Asia. Until the acceptance of rotor spinning wheel, all yarns were produced by aligning fibers through drawing techniques and then twisting the fiber together. With rotor spinning, the fibers in the roving are separated, thus open-end, and then wrapped and twisted as the yarn is drawn out of the rotor cup. Charka. The tabletop or floor charka is one of the oldest known forms of the spinning wheel. The charka works similarly to the great wheel, with a drive wheel being turned by hand, while the yarn is spun off the tip of the spindle. The floor charka and the great wheel closely resemble each other. with both. The spinning must stop in order to wind the yarn onto the spindle. The word charka, which has links with Persian chark, wheel, is related to the word circle. The charka was both a tool and a symbol of the Indian independence movement. The charka, a small, portable, hand-cranked wheel, is ideal for spinning cotton and other fine, short staple fibers, though it can be used to spin other fibers as well. The size varies, from that of a hardbound novel to the size of a briefcase, to a floor charka. Mahatma Gandhi brought the charka into wider use with his teachings. He hoped the charka would assist the people of India achieve self-sufficiency and independence, and therefore used the charka as a symbol of the Indian independence movement and included it on earlier versions of the flag of India. Great wheel. The great wheel was one of the earlier types of spinning wheel. The fiber is held in the left hand and the wheel slowly turned with the right. This wheel is thus good for using the long draw spinning technique, which requires only one active hand most of the time, thus freeing a hand to turn the wheel. The great wheel is usually used to spin short staple fibers, and can only be used with fiber preparations that is suited to long draw spinning. The great wheel is usually over 5 feet in height. The large drive wheel turns the much smaller spindle assembly, with the spindle revolving many times for each turn of the drive wheel. The yarn is spun at an angle off the tip of the spindle, and is then stored on the spindle. To begin spinning on a great wheel, first a leader is tied onto the base of the spindle and spiraled up to the tip. Then the spinner overlaps a handful of fiber with the leader, holding both gently together with the left hand, and begins to slowly turn the drive wheel clockwise with the right hand, while simultaneously walking backward and drawing the fiber in the left hand away from the spindle at an angle. The left hand must control the tension on the wool to produce an even result. Once a sufficient amount of yarn has been made, the spinner turns the wheel backward a short distance to unwind the spiral on the spindle, then turns it clockwise again, and winds the newly made yarn onto the spindle, finishing the wind-on by spiraling back out to the tip again to make another draw. Treadle wheel. This type of wheel is powered by the spinner's foot rather than their hand or a motor. The spinner sits and pumps a foot treadle that turns the drive wheel via a crankshaft and a connecting rod. This leaves both hands free for drafting the fibers, which is necessary in the short draw spinning technique, which is often used on this type of wheel. The old-fashioned pointed-driven spindle is not a common feature of the treadle wheel. Instead, most modern wheels employ a flyer and bobbin system which twists the yarn and winds it onto a spool simultaneously. These wheels can be single or double treadle, which is a matter of preference and does not affect the operation of the wheel. Double drive. The double drive wheel is named after its drive band, which goes around the spinning wheel twice. The drive band turns the flyer, which is the horseshoe-shaped piece of wood surrounding the bobbin, as well as the bobbin. Due to a difference in the size of the whirls, the bobbin whirl, which has a smaller radius than the flyer whirl, turns slightly faster. Thus both the flyer and bobbin rotate to twist the yarn, and the difference in speed continually winds the yarn onto the bobbin. Generally, the speed difference, or ratio, is adjusted by the size of the whirls and the tension of the drive band. The drive band on the double drive wheel is generally made from a non-stretch yarn or twine. Candlewick is also used. Single drive. A single drive wheel has one drive band that goes around the flywheel and the bobbin or the flyer. Most of the drive bands for single drive wheels are made from synthetic cord, which is elastic and does not slip easily on the wheel. While the spinner is making new yarn, the bobbin and the flyer turn in unison, but where the spinner wants to wind the yarn onto the bobbin or the flyer slows down and thus the yarn winds on. The one part slows down because of the brake band, which loops over that element. The tighter the break band is, the more pull on the yarn, because the more friction the bobbin has to overcome to turn in sync with the flyer. Castle style, when the spindle and flyer are located above the wheel, rather than off to one side, the wheel is said to be a castle wheel. This type of wheel is often more compact, thus easier to store. Some castle wheels are even made to fold up small enough that they fit in carry-on luggage at the airport. Electric spinning wheel. Electric spinning wheels or e-spinners are powered by an electric motor rather than via a treadle. Some require mains power while others may be powered by a low-voltage source, such as a rechargeable battery. Most e-spinners are small and portable. One of the attractions of an e-spinner is that it is not necessary to coordinate treadling with handling the fiber, so it is generally easier to learn to spin on an e-spinner than a traditional treadle-style spinning wheel. E-spinners are also suitable for spinners who have trouble treadling for various reasons. E-spinners represent an evolution of the tools used in the craft of hand spinning, similar to what has occurred in sewing, quilting, woodworking, and other crafts. Importance: the spinning wheel increased the productivity of thread making by a factor of greater than 10. Medieval historian Lynn White credited the spinning wheel with increasing the supply of rags, which led to cheap paper, which was a factor in the development of printing. Culture: the ubiquity of the spinning wheel has led to its inclusion in the art, literature, and other expressions of numerous cultures around the world, and in the case of South Asia it has become a powerful political symbol. Political symbolism. Starting in 1931, the traditional spinning wheel became the primary symbol on the flag of the Provisional Government of Free India. Mahatma Gandhi's manner of dress and commitment to hand spinning were essential elements of his philosophy and politics. He chose the traditional loincloth as a rejection of Western culture and a symbolic identification with the poor of India. His personal choice became a powerful political gesture as he urged his more privileged followers to copy his example and discard, or even burn, their European-style clothing and return with pride to their ancient, pre-colonial culture. For Gandhi claimed that spinning thread in the traditional manner also had material advantages, as it would create the basis for economic independence and the possibility of survival for India's impoverished rural. This commitment to traditional cloth making was also part of a larger Swadeshi movement, which aimed for the boycott of all British goods. As Gandhi explained to Charlie Chaplin in 1931, the return to spinning did not mean a rejection of all modern technology but of the exploitive and controlling economic and political system in which textile manufacture had become entangled. Gandhi said, "Machinery in the past has made us dependent on England, and the only way we can rid ourselves of the dependence is to boycott all goods made by machinery. This is why we have made it the patriotic duty of every Indian to spin his own cotton and weave his own cloth." Literature and folk tales. The Golden Spinning Wheel is a Czech poem by Karel Jaromír Urban that was included in his classic collection of folk ballads, Kittis. Rumpelstiltskin, one of the tales collected by the Brothers Grimm, revolves around a woman who is imprisoned under threat of execution unless she can spin straw into gold. Rumpelstiltskin helps her with this task, ultimately at the cost of her firstborn child. However, she makes a new bargain with him and is able to keep her child after successfully guessing his name. Another folk tale that incorporates spinning wheels is the classic fairy tale Sleeping Beauty, in which the main character pricks her hand or finger on the poisoned spindle of a spinning wheel and falls into a deep sleep following a wicked fairy or witch's curse. Numerous variations of the tale exist, and in only some of them is the spindle actually attached to, associated with a spinning wheel. Perhaps surprisingly, a traditional spindle does not have a sharp end that could prick a person's finger. Despite this, the narrative idea persists that Sleeping Beauty or Briar Rose or Dawn Rosen pricks her finger on the spindle, a device which she has never seen before, as they have been banned from the kingdom in a forlorn attempt to prevent the curse of the wicked godmother fairy. Walt Disney included the wheel in their animated film version of Perrault's Tale, whereas only a spindle is used in Tchaikovsky's ballet The Sleeping Beauty. Spinning wheels are also integral to the plot or characterization in the Scottish folk tale Habitrot and the German tales The Three Spinners and the 12 Huntsmen. Louisa May Alcott, most famous as the author of Little Women, wrote a collection of short stories called Spinning Wheel Stories, which were not about spinning wheels but instead meant to be read while engaging in the rather tedious act of using a spinning wheel. Music: classical and symphonic. In 1814, Franz Schubert composed Gretchen am Spinnrad, a lied for piano and voice based on a poem from Goethe's Faust. The piano part depicts Gretchen's restlessness as she spins on a spinning wheel while waiting by a window for her love to return. Antonin Dvorak composed The Golden Spinning Wheel, a symphonic poem based on the folk ballad From Kittus by Carol Jaromir Urbin. Camille Saint-Saëns wrote Le Roi d'Omphale, symphonic poem in A major, Op. 31, a musical treatment of the classical story of Omphale and Heracles. Folk and ballad. The Spinning Wheel is also the title, subject of a classic Irish folk song by John Francis Waller. A traditional Irish folk song, Torn Mare, is generally sung in praise of the spinning wheel, but was regarded by Mrs. Costello, who collected it, as much corrupted, and may have had a darker narrative. It is widely taught in junior schools in Ireland. Sun Chaka Dai Mithi Mithi Kook is a Sufi song in the Punjabi language inspired by the traditional spinning wheel. Opera. Spinning wheels also feature prominently in the Wagner opera The Flying Dutchman. The second act begins with local girls sitting at their wheels and singing about the act of spinning. Art. Spinning wheels may be found as motifs in art around the world, ranging from their status as domestic, utilitarian items to their more symbolic role